Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kathy Latinas, and I chair the Allen Reads Committee. And on behalf of our entire committee and the Friends of the Allen Public Library, it is truly an honor to welcome you to be back at Allen Reads One Book Project. I would like to thank the Friends of the Allen Public Library for their support, specifically our committee members, Susan Jackson, our president, J.J. Gillette, Jane Bennett, Farida Ship-Chandler, Kay Hawkins, Patrick McGowan, Kimberly Richardson. Our publicity through Caitlin Runty, and then special thanks to the staff of the Allen Public Library, and they include Jeff Timms, Claudia Wayland, Amy Pryor, Kimber Harlan, our technicians Kevin Vaught and Aaron Seeley, and a very special thanks to Tom Keener, our chair of cultural arts here in the community, for all that he does. He schedules, he advertises, he coordinates, but most importantly, he's always willing to listen and provide very sage advice. So I thank you very much. I'd like to thank the City of Allen for the hotel grant that allowed us to advertise and publicize this event, and the Allen Arts Alliance for their community grant. So without further ado, may I present our guest of honor, Finn Murphy.
I'm glad I'm here too. Thank you. Hi. This feels pretty formal. I feel like I'm back in school and I did something wrong, but I would like to thank the Allen Public Library. So I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut, which is it's a state on the other side of the big river up there. And it's a very wealthy town. We didn't grow up wealthy. We were just dirt poor Irish Catholics. I've got 7 brothers and sisters. But when I wrote a book, I contacted the local hometown public library to see if I could do a reading or something. And they wouldn't let a truck driver in the service entrance in Connecticut. So thank you all very much for the invitation. And being in Texas, there's a lot of truck drivers that come from Texas. There's even more truck drivers who say they're from Texas, especially the ones from Arkansas. Now, I don't say I'm from Texas because, well, you can tell from my diction I'm not from Texas. And if you ever saw me wear a cowboy hat, you'd know that it's a guy from Connecticut trying to look like he's from Texas. So that doesn't work either. I'm not a total lost cause, though. I do have a little ranch in Colorado. I've got 36 acres, and I've got 24 cattle. So I guess we could paraphrase the Texas saying that I'm all cattle and no hat. But I'm going to talk to you tonight about my 20 years driving a truck. And I did all of that as a mover. I don't hear any groans yet, but movers aren't usually, the most welcome person in a house. But I was always a mover. I never hauled freight. I never did anything else. Always as a mover. I worked for North American Van Lines, Allied Van Lines, and then for my last 10 years, I worked for a boutique moving company doing high-end executive relocation. So in those, I would just, my crew and myself, we'd go into a house and the people would leave. And then we would pack up everything in the house and then load the truck and then deliver it to wherever it was going to go. So that's kind of the history. So I'm going to talk a little bit about moving first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about trucking. And then I'd like to open it up to questions or whatever. You've got a tame truck driver in front of you, or reasonably tame anyway. And if you folks have any questions about what that life might be like, I'm here to help. So I'm just going to start with my prepared remarks. And here's why I wrote this book. Because I thought it was time for a reasonably literate book about sort of mythical American occupation. Probably all of you have looked up in the cab when passing a truck on the highway. You see the big sleeper, maybe a clean shirt hanging from a hanger, maybe wondering what that life might be like. Maybe you look at trucks and maybe they all look interchangeable. Maybe you think, gee, wonder what everybody, maybe they all do the same kind of job. Maybe they all do the same kind of work. And none of those things are true. There's a strict hierarchy among truck drivers depending on what they do, what they haul, what they drive, and how they're paid. So, as I said, I'm a long-haul mover. I work for a van line. Movers are called bed buggers in the trucking world. And we're generally shunned by the trucker fraternity. Flatbed haulers are called skateboarders. Double trailers are called wiggle wagons. Natural gas haulers are called suicide jockeys. Lumber trucks are called toothpicks. Live animal haulers are called chicken chokers. And there's a whole other slang for non-trucks, like maybe most of you all, you're called four-wheelers. An ambulance is called a bone box or a meat wagon. A motorcycle rider is called an organ donor. A school bus is a cheese wagon. And like any specialized vocabulary, the whole point is to magnify separation. And truckers are separate from the general community, and my book explores why that is. The long haul, it's also about work. It's about how manual work can be a worthy occupation, how manual labor has been devalued over time, and how satisfying and tribal and elemental it can be to work with a group of men performing a difficult task. The book's also about what I've seen going on in the United States over the last 40 years. My choice of work has given me a unique perspective. You see, I don't drive a straight line from terminal to terminal on the interstates. Being a mover, I actually get to go into towns and communities and interact with the families who are navigating their transition into a new home. And I really love that part. 41 million Americans move every year. That's a mind-boggling number. Very few of those 40 million have any idea what they're getting into, and nobody has any idea of the kind of people that are coming into their house to take their stuff away. People who lock their doors, people who have burglar alarms, people who carry umbrellas, people who change their garage door code, people who have private security forces. Daily, they consign everything they own over to the movers. I find that really odd. Movers, they're like morticians and lawyers. Hiring one indicates an irrevocable step that carries a lot of emotional baggage. Often our entry on the scene isn't good news. Children's lives are disrupted, and extended family can be separated. A wife or a husband's status, or sense of place, status as an earner can be threatened. Moving is disruptive, emotionally jarring, incredibly stressful on all the family members. People are always asking me to give them some moving advice to make it less fraught, and my advice is always the same. Sell everything you've got and pack a suitcase. Nobody does that. And I lost my page. Hold on. I know what you're thinking. How many pages is he going to talk about? So I'm well aware of the generally dismal view the public holds toward movers. Moving stories have a universal one-upmanship about them. And I'm not saying moving horror stories don't exist. I've done my share myself. But what I'm hoping that this book does is give the reader a realistic sense of how the industry works from the inside. The moving industry is opaque, and I shine some light here and there. But the book is not a bitter diatribe. I don't have an axe to grind with the moving industry. I don't have an axe to grind with the trucking industry. Though if you do read the book, or have read the book, you will hear about some things that are sometimes unpleasant, occasionally disgusting, and once in a while, criminal. My labor pool, people who help me load and unload these trucks, is a multicultural mix of workers who reside at the lowest end of the American dream. My fellow truckers are not a phalanx of redneck simians. My customers, the people I move, seem confused. In the book, there's also many moments of gentle poignancy that serve to highlight the ocean of disorientation that a long-haul driver like me swims in. I'm moving people's homes, and I'm moving them with their lives, but actually, I don't have a home. It's weird irony. I've also been truthful in the book about what I've seen out there on the big slab, which is what we call the interstate highway system. I've watched Kansas and Nebraska become denuded of people. I've seen the death flurries of hundreds of towns in the face of big boxes that have destroyed once thriving town centers. I've seen self-serving land use transform the valleys and prairies of Colorado, California, Oregon into swaths of auto-dependent low-density housing. I've seen almost every hilltop between St. Louis and Santa Barbara strewn with wind turbines. I've watched our roadways fall apart. The heartland is empty now, except for meat-packing plants set well off from the road. A corn monoculture where I can drive for 100 miles and see no sign of human habitation. I can drive in New England. I've watched the convenience store eject the once ubiquitous general store, and then prisons, lots of prisons. That's about as dark as I'm going to get. We're going to move on from there. The log haul, it's not a dystopian screed at all. It's breezy and funny most of the time. We spend some time with Tommy Mahoney, my insomniac Florida sidekick who carries a thermos of vodka and cranberry juice the way a marathon runner carries his water bottle. We meet the genial Bangladeshi doctor who moves to rural Utah to become a cowboy, and we'll meet good old Mrs. Fowler, who can't bear to throw anything away. I've moved over 3,000 families, and I know things. Moving is a full-scale life inspection. I'll know more about you in 30 minutes than your best friend will know about you in 30 years. I don't get any voyeuristic pleasure from that. Sometimes I do. I know the things that people want to keep hidden. I know that everyone has almost the exact same stuff, and I most certainly know where it's all going to end up. In a yard sale, a dumpster. It might take a generation, though usually not. But Aunt Tilly's precious sewing machine is getting tossed. So is your high school yearbook, the kids' drawings taped to the refrigerator, and all your Tupperware, whether there's matching tops or not. A decade or 3 down the road, when the estate is settled, nobody wants to pay the storage fees, and off it will go into the ether. Maybe you can't bring yourself to throw your stuff away, but your descendants will have no such qualms. This is not particularly anecdotal because I'm the guy who's paid to throw the stuff away. All movers are Buddhists, even if they don't know it. We understand that man-made things are transitory, and it's the rare mover who becomes a collector of anything. Susan just offered me a Pez truck, and I turned it down because I just don't need another one. But here's the thing, it's not sad that your stuff's going to get tossed away. It's not tragic. It's a chance to focus on what's important. That it's, not the stuff that you have, but the connection with people and your community and family and friends. And many of the people that I move, especially the high-end corporate relocations, seem to have that backwards. Let's talk about truckers a little bit. When I first started, I got my CDL license when I was 21 years old, and CB radios were a big thing. They still have CB radios in the truck. My CB handle is U-turn, because I put trucks where trucks aren't supposed to go, which is private residences. Trucking is enshrouded in the American myth of the free-range cowboy. Go west, young man. Take a long road trip. None of those cultural icons have much to do with the work that I do or the work of any other truck driver. But everybody does want to pull the air horn, which we're not allowed to do anymore because it spooks the drivers. So this book tries to unpeel the onion of myths so maybe we can find a better and larger truth. And one of the truths is it's very rewarding to get to go to places most people have never been. And we get to see a lot of things that are unseen, especially in cars, because we're way up high. People do a lot of things in their cars other than drive. I don't know why people think being in an automobile is anonymous. You're in this machine that's got windows all around it, and you got a license plate that you could be identified in 30 seconds. So why don't you think about that next time you're driving? And I've seen people reading books with their hands on the steering wheel. Seen people put on makeup. A lot of people eat in the car. Seen a guy with a laptop on the passenger seat. Seen some other things we won't talk about in mixed company. Another truth, though, of being out there alone is the constant feeling of disorientation, loneliness, and a certain amount of fear. That drivers could have fear and can be experiencing fear isn't something that drivers talk about much, but it's real. And here I'm going to just read a little bit from the book, and then won't take too long. And then I'd really love to open this up to questions and comments. I might as well sit down. Done a lot of sitting in my time. Listened to a lot of radio. Listened to a lot of audiobooks. Loveland Pass, Colorado, on U.S. Route 6, summits at 11,991 feet. That's where I'm going. I decided to skip the congestion on the Eisenhower Tunnel, and going up a steep grade is never as bad as going down. At the top of Loveland Pass, high up in my Columbia Freightliner, pulling a spanking new, fully loaded moving van, I reckon I can say I'm at 12,000 feet. When I look down, the world disappears into a miasma of fog and wind and snow. It's July. The road signs are clear enough. The first one says, runaway truck ramp, 1.5 miles. Next one, speed limit, 35 miles an hour for vehicles over 26,000 pounds. The next one says, are your brakes cool and adjusted? The next one says, all commercial vehicles are required to carry chains. I run through that in my mind. 1.5 miles to the runaway truck ramp seems like a pretty long way. 35 miles an hour seems really fast. My brakes are cool, but adjusted? I hope so. I have chains in my equipment compartment. I figure the bad weather will last only the first 1,000 feet. The practical aspects of putting on chains in a snowstorm with no pullover spot, in pitch dark, at 12,000 feet, in a gale, wearing only a t-shirt, is a prospect Dante never considered in enumerating his circles of hell. The other option is to keep rolling. So I roll. I can feel the sweat running down my arms. I can feel my hands shaking. I can taste the bile rising in my throat from the greasy burger I ate at the Idaho Springs Carl's Jr. It's the only place with truck parking. I've got 8 miles of 7% downhill grade ahead of me that has taken more trucks and more lives than I care to think about. The road surface is a mix of rain, slush, and probably ice. I downshift my 13-speed transmission to 5th gear, slow down to 23 miles an hour, set the Jake brake to all 6 cylinders. A Jake brake, by the way, is an air compression inhibitor that turns my engine into the primary braking system. A Jake brake sounds like a machine gun beneath my feet, so it works to keep 80,000 pounds of steel and rubber under control. I watch the tachometer, which tells me my engine speed. And when it redlines at 2,200 RPMs, I'm at 28 miles an hour. I brush the brakes to bring her back down to 23, and if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. My tender touch might cause the heavy trailer to slide away, and I'll be able to read the logo in reverse legend from my mirrors. It's called a jackknife. Once it starts, you can't stop it. In a jackknife, the trailer comes all the way around, takes both lanes, and crushes against the cab until the whole thing comes to a crashing stop at the bottom of the abyss or against the granite side of the Rocky Mountains. It doesn't happen this time, but the weather's getting worse. I hit 28 miles an hour again, caress the brake back down to 23, and start the sequence again. Fondle the brake, watch the mirrors, feel the machine, check the tach, listen to the Jake, watch the air pressure. The air pressure read 120 psi at the top. Now it reads 80. At 60, an alarm will go off. At 40, the brakes will automatically lock or just give up. Never mind that now. Just don't go past 28 miles an hour and keep coaxing her back down to 23. I'll do this 20 or 30 times over the next half an hour, never knowing if the trailer will hit a bit of ice, the air compressor will give up, the Jake will disengage, or someone will slam on the brakes in front of me. My destination? It's the ultra-rich haven called Aspen, Colorado. And this makes perfect sense because I'm a long-haul mover at the pinnacle of the game. I'm a specialist. I can make a couple $100,000 a year doing high-end executive relocation. No U-Hauls for me, thank you. I'll take the movie stars, the ambassadors, the corporate bigwigs. At the office in Connecticut, they call me the Great White Mover. This Aspen load, it's insured for $3 million, and it belongs to a former investment banker from a former investment bank. He apparently escaped the toppling citadel with his personal loot intact. My cargo consists of a dozen or so crated modern art canvases, 8 600-pound granite gravestones of Qing Dynasty emperors, half a dozen king-size pillow-top beds I'll never figure out how to assemble, and an assortment of Edwardian antiques. The man I'm moving, known as the shipper in the trade, has purchased a $25 million starter castle in a hyper-secure Aspen subdivision. Enough about him. I'm still on Loveland Pass, looking downhill for brake lights. I can probably slow down, but there's no chance of coming to a quick stop. If I slam on the brakes, I'll either crash through the vehicle in front of me or go over the side. I want to smoke a cigarette, but I'm so wound up I could never light it, so I bite off what's left of my fingernails. I'm 60 years old, and I've been doing this on and off since the 1970s. I've seen too many trucks mashed on the side of the road, too many accidents, too many spaced out drivers. On Interstate 80 in Wyoming, I watched a truck in front of me get blown over onto its side in a windstorm. On I-10 in Arizona, I saw a state trooper open the driver door of a car and witnessed a river of blood pour out onto the road. That blood soaking into the pavement could be mine at any moment. All it takes is an instant of bad luck, inattention, a poor decision, an equipment failure, or most likely, someone else's mistake. If that happens, I'm a dead man. And that concludes the reading part of this. I'm not particularly organized, as you can see. But I would like to open this up to any questions or any comments if anybody wants to talk to a tame truck driver. If they don't want to talk to a tame truck driver, I do have a couple of topics we might want to talk about or discuss a little bit. One of them being autonomous vehicles, which are coming sooner than we think. Another one might be, here's an interesting little factoid. Truck drivers get lost 3 times more now that they have GPS systems than when they had road atlases. And up in the Northeast, we've got things called parkways where trucks aren't allowed to go and they have really low bridges. And all the time now you're seeing these trucks just banging into the low bridge. In the jargon, we call that getting a haircut. So we could talk about that. We could talk about where the worst drivers and best drivers in America are and where the worst traffic is. So the worst traffic is Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Dallas, Texas. Let's say have a hand for Dallas, Texas. The best drivers in America seem to come from Michigan. Not sure why. Maybe because they're motorheads. I don't know. That's not a scientific, strictly anecdotal. Here's one other little thing. So we know what the interstate system is, right? All those, the red, white, and blue signs. Does everybody know that the even numbers go east-west and the odd numbers go north-south? You do? Well, of course, you're from Texas. You would know that. Does everybody know that a 1 in front of the number means it goes into a city center? Does everybody know that a 3 or a 6 means it goes, a 4 or a 6, that it goes around a city? And does everybody know that the small numbers begin on the west and end up on the east? So you got I-5 and I-95 on the Atlantic coast. And that the even numbers go north to south, south to north. So you got I-10, I-20. That's a little interesting piece. A lot of people don't know. No questions? Yes, thank you.
Hold on. We will only take a question if I bring the microphone to you. And we have a lady in the back, and I'll be right with you down there.
I like that one, though. We'll get there.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. I'm a realtor. So what are 3 things that you would recommend that my clients look for in a mover?
Good question.
Yes, a really good question. Okay, so you want to have a mover who has a presence in your town. You want to have somebody who actually has trucks and has employees. There's a lot of internet movers and they're just brokers, and they'll always have a lower price, and you won't always get what you think you're going to get. The other thing about using a local business is most of them will be tied to a larger van line, and that's good. But if something goes wrong, then you have that person that you know from school, from church, or whatever, that you can actually call and talk to instead of a call center in, Mumbai or something. So yeah, you want to have some sort of personal touch. Another thing you're going to find is if it's a local move, basically they charge by the men per hour. So say it's $140 for 2 men in a truck. All the prices are going to be the same, so it's really not that big of a deal. And the same will go for interstate moves too. So that would be two things. And then the third thing is there's only a couple things in life that money will completely cure. One thing money will cure is debt. The other thing money will cure is moving. Pay for it, because it's terrible. You got to get your friends to come. Oh, we'll bring you pizza if you help me move. Yeah, I'll be there. And as soon as they get there, they're like, oh, I got to go. So yeah, hire your movers. They do it every day, and they usually do a really good job. So there's three.
May I add a fourth one? Get
Yeah.
the things appraised before you move them.
Oh yeah, buy the insurance.
Okay, I believe the man down here was second.
I've read that the turnover is about 90% per year of truck drivers. How do these guys negotiate that scenario that you mentioned in Colorado? Are they trained to do that in such a short period of time?
No, they're not. There was a terrible accident just a few months ago at the bottom of I-70 as it comes into Denver, and a driver didn't speak a word of English, and he plowed through 14 cars and killed a whole bunch of people. That's not typical, but in the big freight haulers, like you've seen them on the road, Swift or Celadon, CR England, those kinds of guys, their annual turnover rate is actually over 99%.
Wow.
So in terms of specialty trucking, so a mover is considered a specialty trucker. It's much less there. And then if you get into other things like hauling heavy equipment, flatbeds, things that require another skill other than driving, then you can make a pretty good living. If you want to, if you're working for, say, UPS or FedEx or Walmart, these are all good companies to work for. They all pay their truckers by the hour, and they all have 401ks and health plans and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the majority. The majority is going to be those freight companies, and they pay by the mile. So if you're stuck in Dallas traffic for 3 hours and you're making 30 cents an hour, you just made 90 cents. It's a terrible, terrible place at the bottom of the trucking industry. And there's a lot of drivers out there that aren't trained.
Hi, Finn.
Hi.
We really loved your book. It was fantastic. We loved the stories. One story that really warmed our heart was Dr. Dewan and how they welcomed you into their house and served you coffee. Just wondering, do you ever keep in touch with any of the people you move?
Never. And there's no particular reason for it. I was never actually back in that part of Colorado City, Utah there where Dr. Dewan moved. People don't really move there. Just as a quick background, I moved this guy to where the FLDS, plural marriage people, live in this southeastern corner of right there, Arizona border, right there. A very strange place. But this doctor was an obstetrician, and he wanted to deliver a lot of babies, so he went to where the family have like 15 kids, and he was very welcome in that community. And I think he was bringing over some extra wives from Bangladesh too, so he'd fit right in.
Me and her were team drivers for 10 years, and I always wondered how you guys maneuvered through those residential neighborhoods with those big trucks. That'd scare the heck out of me.
That's amazing. You were a team driver. I'd like to talk to you about that. That's interesting. So most of the time I drove alone because I just didn't want anybody with me all the time. Are there any other drivers here, or anybody who's been one? Nobody did a summer job moving? Nope.
Before we end the Q&A, I want to get a story from him. Everybody who's driven a truck has a story. So be prepared to tell your story.
Yeah, and you can tell one too. But you're right. So we move these, and then trucks get bigger all the time too. So when I first started, I had a 40-foot trailer. Now I drive a 53. So it's we have to put the truck into places where sometimes you have trouble with a riding lawnmower, and we got to bring the big truck in there. And to answer your question, sometimes I got stuck. And had to get pulled out. There's one of the chapters in the book is when I was just beginning, and I went down this winding driveway, like a lobster going into a lobster trap, and I couldn't get out. They had to hire 2 tow trucks, and it took like 12 hours and thousands of dollars to get out, because you've seen those giant tow trucks that on the interstate sometimes. Those things cost like $600,000, and they're not shy about charging. Yeah, I used to get stuck, and I got stuck less as I got older and wiser, but especially in the beginning, I was one of those people that wasn't very well trained.
We've had 2 deaths here in Allen on 75 in the last month. And both of them, it was a situation where somebody jumped in front of them or threw on the brakes after jumping in front of them, that kind of thing. And it really was a sobering reminder how dangerous truck driving is. I mean, here in Allen, Texas, to have 2 fatalities in 1 month. I'm sorry? Somebody said something. Within a week. Anyways, it was a brutal reminder of how dangerous it is. And in both cases, it didn't appear that the truck had done anything wrong. But somebody changed lanes and threw on the brakes in front of them. They don't realize you can't stop, 35 tons in 1 second.
Yeah, you want to stay out of the mix if you can, if you're a four-wheeler. So yeah, there's a couple little quick tips. One of them is if you're merging onto the highway, you're coming to my house to the party, which means you need to be invited. So just think about that a little bit. You don't have a right to get into the lane. You have to just wait. You'd think people would know that, but they don't. The other thing is if you're riding alongside, say 55, and you're right next to a truck, just get out of there. Either speed up or slow down. Don't stay near the wheels. Those two were important. I met a guy, he was 86 years old, still had his CDL, worked for Walmart. He did 5 million miles accident-free. I did 1.5 million miles, and I'd like to say they were accident-free, but they weren't. But that just goes to show that anticipation of trouble can probably keep you out of trouble. And that's certainly, if you do 5 million miles accident-free, that person's paying attention all the time. Yeah.
I'm going to ask 2 questions. Let me have this lady. She drove all the way, a long way to come here.
All the way from Richardson, yeah. I grew up in Dallas. I was born here. My mother was born here. My grandmother was born here. But I don't remember growing up ever hearing about accidents involving 18-wheelers. And now, all the time. Is it the turnover? Do you have a reason for that?
Well, I don't know. I would, just off the top of my head, a couple of things. I mean, there's a lot more cars out on the road than there were, that's for sure. We don't really know, in these cases, what chain of events, made things happen. What number hasn't changed, though, is about 40,000 people are killed on the American roadways every year, and that number stayed pretty steady for like the last 30 years or so. That's a lot of fatalities. 1.5 million people are killed on the roadways worldwide, and 3 million people in America every year are injured with traffic accidents. And nobody knows how to count the property damage. So it's carnage out there, and has been probably since the car replaced the horse. And that brings up, this idea of autonomous vehicles. Maybe I'll just talk about that for a second. I'm pretty ambivalent about it for a couple different reasons. Well, one of them is you got 2.5 million truck drivers that'll be tossed out of a job. So you've got this, technological advances that are happening, and we've seen this, all of us have seen this, and it just gets faster and faster. They used to measure these changes in centuries, from a power loom to a steam loom, and whatever, all this stuff, those industrial advances took a long time. Now they're taking weeks, months, and we don't seem to be taking this social impact into account. And I don't know what's going to happen when 2.5 million drivers are thrown out of work. Already, warehouses are pretty automated already. The driver comes in now. If you look at a modern Amazon warehouse, the driver back up to the dock, open the doors, and then the robot machines come and empty the trailer and fill it up again. And I don't know what the ultimate thing's going to be about that. But on the other side of it, we do have this carnage on the road. So if they get this technology figured out, which I'm sure they will, that 40,000 deaths, 40,000 people dead a year is going to go down to like 40 dead. It's going to really take care of the carnage. And 15 years from now, you're going to be driving down the highway with your daughter or granddaughter or something. You're going to be sitting in a recliner chair watching a movie. Your granddaughter's still going to have her face in the phone probably, but she's going to look out the window of the vehicle and say, "You guys used to have pedals on the floor that made this stop and go? You guys had a wheel you put your hands on, and you were all independently doing this on the roadways? It must have been carnage out there. I bet you were killing 40,000 people a year. You people were savages." They're going to look at independent drivers 20, 30 years from now like somebody who owned a slave, Oh my God, I cannot believe this. You did that? You seem like such a nice person, but you drove your own car? Oh. So it's coming. And it's going to come, everybody's got their own little thing about autonomous stuff, in favor or against or whatever, but it's going to happen through the insurance industry. That's how I see it. The insurance rates for driving your own independent vehicle are going to be so high, you're not going to be able to get insurance, and everybody's going to have to go into an autonomous vehicle. What else we got?
I had a couple of questions. We're in the steel industry, so we deal with a lot of flatbeds from one side of the country to the other. There seems to be a difference in truck drivers or in the different loads that they take from one side of the nation. What, in your opinion, talk to me about the flatbed drivers. What's your thoughts about those guys?
So flatbed drivers are a perfect example of somebody who has a specialty that sets them apart from the regular freight haulers. You've got to have, especially hauling steel, you've got to have specialized equipment. You've got to know how to tie it down. You've got to know what your weight limits are per axle. You're always carrying a heavy load. And talk about another place where you're going, odd places where trucks aren't supposed to go. Steel haulers are going onto construction sites, they're going into mines. So those guys, most of them, they're going to be doing pretty well as far as income goes, and they're certainly going to be a cut above in terms of knowing what they're doing, because you don't just get your CDL and then go haul steel. You're going to have to be doing it for doing that for a long time. In a way, like a steel hauler or a mover, the driving is incidental to the real job. The real job being keeping the load safe. And if you're just hauling freight in a box, you get 800 cartons of Lay's potato chips or something, you don't have to worry that much about what you're doing. But you can't have that flatbed load coming off the truck when you're going around a curve or something like that, start killing people. So that's what I talk to people about, or people ask me, gee, I'm thinking about doing truck driving as a career. I always say, learn how to do something related to that brings added value to that job, whether that be steel, whether that be moving furniture, whether that be hauling heavy equipment. You guys seen those wind turbines, the big wings? Have you seen them on the roadway? Those trucks are like 250 feet long. That's a specialty. You don't see them as much as you might because they have to go under special permit, and usually they're out like 2 to 4:30 in the morning if you're out and about that time of day, which most of us aren't. Yes, sir.
I had a second question.
Oh, yeah.
Could you share with me, how do you raise a family? Talk to me about the challenges of being married and doing what you're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot more teams, husband and wife teams, driving now than there used to be, but we're all old. Nobody's raising a family on the road. Can't, unless it's a dog, but not with children. So this is one of the age-old issues with this. Is first thing is 7% or a little less of truck drivers are women. And there's good reasons for that. It's still not a great environment out there for women. In some respects, it's back in the 1950s or so. But you've got so the man is out there on the road, and then the wife is at home taking care of the family, and he's not around a lot. So no, it's not ideal if it doesn't suit you that way. But so many drivers come from the Midwest and the South and from the Rust Belt that they don't want to punch a clock and they don't want to work for minimum wage, and they see this as a way out, and they might not have the education or the choices or the added value to do anything different. And these are the kind of people that you actually don't want to throw out of work, because then they don't feel useful, and causes all kinds of social problems.
I never got a CDL. I don't have any depth of field. I can't back a semi. I wish I could. I always wanted to drive one. All those gears look like fun. But I did get a chauffeur's license when Texas had them. And the one question that they made sure every single one of us future cab drivers learned was that it takes a semi 2 lanes to turn. And I'm grateful for that all the time.
It sure does. And here's a little secret about backing up. And backing up is fun. And that goes into this gentleman's question over here. You're backing into some leafy, long driveway. It takes a lot of skill to do that. But it's a lot easier to back up a 53-foot trailer than it is to back up like an RV connected to a car, because the wheelbase is much shorter. So if you're trying to back up your boat or your RV and you say, man, these truck drivers must be good, it's actually a lot easier.
Why do you get lost with GPS more often now?
Oh, because the person who's relying on the GPS is no longer relying on their mind, and they're no longer relying on their spatial understanding of where they are in the universe. They are listening to a voice, which you can change from a male to a female, an Australian and English or whatever, but actually the accent doesn't make it any better. You really, you need the Rand McNally Road Atlas with the laminated pages, so when you spill your coffee, you can wipe it off. And you really need to visualize where you're going and how you're going to get there. And that's what people don't do anymore. I don't want to get into a whole thing about how electronics is making us all dumber, but in the case of GPS, it really, really is. And I've got, I've got an 11-year-old grandniece, and I showed her my road atlas, and she didn't know how to read a map. But she does know how to listen to, in 300 feet, you're going to turn right.
I'm going to ask two questions, and then we have another question in the back. But one is, what were some of the challenges you had in character development in your novel? And then the second question is, my father was in World War II, and he saw people from all walks of life, all colors, all incomes, poor, rich, doesn't matter, die for our country. So we were always raised that the janitor is just as important as the bank president. And I started to notice, even as a teenager, that people treated people in uniforms, whether it be moving or custodians, with a certain kind of pedantic attitude. Can you address those questions?
Well, the first thing you're talking about is sort of class, right? Social hierarchy. And my father was in World War II too, and we were always brought up to treat everybody with respect. But, there is, there is a hierarchy. And, it's natural to human beings, I think. There's an old Irish joke. It says if 3 Irishmen were marooned on a desert island, 2 of them would be off in the corner talking about the third guy. So I just don't think it's that odd. And, in regional differences and cultural differences, I think they exist, and I think it's all right to acknowledge that. One of the nice things about the trucking industry is that it actually is colorblind, and it actually is regional blind, because the work is so difficult and it's held in such low esteem that it doesn't matter anymore. And if it's 4 o'clock in the morning on a snowy mountain and you're about to put your chains on and another driver comes over and he happens to be from New Mexico or Mexico or Texas or Maine, and he says, "Hey driver, can I give you a hand?" You don't really care anymore what color he is or where he's from. And the trucking industry is really good in that respect. There isn't that divisiveness. And the other question, well, character development, my book is a memoir, so I was just able to have my character be who I was, so that wasn't difficult. One of the difficult things is in telling certain stories, though, is not to trying to make a point without bringing too much judgment about it. And, it comes through in just my remarks this evening. I do have a certain judgment about the way super wealthy people treat working people. Yeah, I do. It gets on my nerves, and I don't think I deserve it. I don't think the people who work for me loading and unloading trucks, who are now they're all Hispanic, as is everyone in the landscaping business and as is everyone in the restaurant business. There's an old joke about in Greenwich, Connecticut, a woman called the cops because she saw a Mexican guy and he wasn't carrying a leaf blower. So that's not really funny, but I deal every day with the working poor. And I believe they have dignity, and I believe they work hard, and I believe we should all be treated the same. And it doesn't always happen.
We drive a lot on the road. So is there certain times that you should not be on the road is my first question. And then second one, while you're on a road, like we were traveling all the way to Oklahoma and did a back road and found 3 grandmas in the back of this, and we had the best grandma biscuit, gravy, yumminess. Is there like one that you discovered throughout all your travels, like your favorite food?
Yeah, so there's this old thing, you eat where the truckers eat because they know where the best places are to eat, and that goes back a long way. In most truck stops now, the restaurants are gone, and there's like a Subway franchise. So there's very few restaurants left in truck stops. And then the other thing, as trucks have gotten bigger and bigger, so I've got a 53-foot trailer, and I've got an extra long sleeper, so I'm actually only allowed to go about 1.5 miles off the interstates. I can't, and obviously for deliveries and pickups I can, but I'm not going to be going, touring with that thing. It's like having this huge albatross on your back all the time. And as I said, you got to know where you're going. So no, I don't find that. But if I was traveling in a car, I would be getting off the highway as often as I can to see what else is out there, because you do find some great stuff. You see some great places. You get some great surprises. And the best time to be on the road is, the middle of the night. Between 1 and 5 in the morning. And if you're making a long trip, what always worked for me is I'd start really, really early, like 3 in the morning. Because 3 to noon is 9 hours, but you're watching the sun come up. The time just goes so much faster. And then from like noon to 3 feels like it's only 3 hours, but it feels like those 9. So you gotta, I would say the middle of the night, just watch out for the drunks. But that's a great thing that has happened, in the 40 years since I first got my license is, this whole drunk driving thing, it just isn't very much of it anymore. Not in the way it used to be.
My question is, have you hit many wild animals at those hours from 3 to 12? On those rural roads?
No, but once I was driving on Interstate 80 in Pennsylvania, and I was coming down a hill and I saw this truck off to the right, and it was off the road, and something didn't look right. And I pulled off to the side in front of it, and then I came back, and I knew something wasn't right because the whole tractor was off and everything else. And I walked up and I looked at the windshield, and there was a dead deer, right where the driver was. And the deer was dead and the driver was dead. So no, I have not personally hit anything like that big. I don't even think I've run over an armadillo, excuse me. Amarillo's the place where they have the 72-ounce steak that you get for free. So no, I haven't run into that very much. But there's certainly roadkill out there that we all see every day. It's another carnage that we're all responsible for that maybe we're not too proud of. And I don't think autonomous vehicles will take care of that either.
Well, I'm very skeptical about autonomous vehicles. There's no way you could possibly write a task analysis, even driving a 4-wheeler a mile to the store, let alone all the variables of a long-haul trip of any type. So I'm very skeptical that those will ever be safe. My question is, are there particular routes or particular stretches of road that you really dread, that are just really a chore, either because of altitude or grade? What do you think are the hardest roads to drive on?
Yeah, I'd say I-70 in Colorado, west of Denver, is probably the most challenging road in the United States, maybe, except Interstate 84 coming into Pendleton, Oregon. You've got a big mountain there called Cabbage. You've got Grapevine on I-10 coming into Los Angeles. All of those, and you got Black Mountain on Interstate 40 in western North Carolina. All of those are mountain roads and often congested and often wet. So for me personally, it's mountain roads in the cold weather. For other people, though, it just depends. My first day after I got my CDL, I drove from Greenwich, Connecticut into Manhattan in a tractor trailer, and unloaded a big apartment building right there on Park Avenue, and that was all I knew. So it didn't daunt me at all. So you get these Western drivers, and they just they whistle and put food in the microwave and talk to their people on the cell phone while they're going up and down these big hills with ice on the roads, and they couldn't care less. But God forbid you put them in New York City. So it's all relative. And about the autonomous vehicles. One of us is going to be right. It's either coming or not. We'll find out.
In a 20-hour, 24-hour period, are there certain hours that or limits that you have to abide by?
Yeah, so there's we're allowed to drive about 11 hours within a 14-hour window. And then you could do that for 7 days, or I can't even remember. So here's another thing, electronic logs. So now all trucks now have electronic logging devices. So we used to have logbooks where we could lie about our hours, and now we can't do that anymore. And then it tells you when to stop and when to start. So what is it now? After 70 hours, you got to take a restart at 34 hours, right? I think that's what it is.
I just have a question about the two-lane turning. As a four-wheeler, should we hurry up and get out of your way or give you space to turn? Thank you.
Oh, you want to race? You can race. You can race. You might even win almost all the time. You might win all the time. It just goes with, I try to be consistent here. Give the truck as much space as you can. Because when you're making a right turn, especially in city driving, you're making a right turn in a city thing, and you're going to try to snake past me on that two-lane turn. I'm not going to see you, because I'm probably going to be looking to see if somebody is trying to get in front of me on the left turn lane and the other thing of traffic. So I think the rule is just always give the truck more room than you think they need. But it is fun to do that race sometimes. And a lot of the trailers are perfectly situated, with the windshield height too. So if you do miss, it'll cut your head off.
Hi, Mr. Murphy. In the display case out in the hallway, there's a page that says the 3 most popular states to register your truck are Texas, Florida, California. Why those 3 states?
Tax law. Yep. So some states have more friendly policies than others with respect to registrations and insurance for trucking companies. And I think, I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, because I think Indiana is another one which is very friendly to trucking companies. I know Texas is, and California is not friendly to trucking companies. I don't know if anybody saw this. There's not going to be any internal combustion vehicles allowed in California after 2035. There's a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of unintended consequences about that.
Also, do you still have any relatives back in Ireland?
I do. My mother's family comes from Kildare, and they were they felt themselves to be a little grandiose. And my father's family is from Ballyhonus, County Mayo, and we're dirt poor peasant potato farmers and still have been. My grandfather always said, because a lot of Irish Americans, they try to bring their forebears back and say, I'm related to the great King Brian Boru, or I'm related to Queen Moore or something. And my grandfather always said, dukes don't emigrate. So I'm very proud of my peasant stock, and I'm pretty sure nobody of note has ever come from my family. Is that it, Tom?
I have another question. It is often described that an author's first novel is a projection of their own inner psychological, subliminal, subconscious needs to resolve issues, or did you hear any of that in any of your around the country making book tours? Did anybody ever ask that question?
Nobody's ever asked that question. And I'm not sure this is the proper forum to go into my particular psychological problems. However, I can give a short version. So I'm the 5th child of an Irish Catholic family. There's 8. I have 7 brothers and sisters, so there's 8 of us, and I'm a typical middle child, with all that entails, Tom.
Did you have to compete for the last potato?
Yes, I had to compete for the last potato. I had to compete for attention. I have my older brother has written 6 books, and I have a younger sister who's written 3 books, and I've written 1 book. But in typical middle child fashion, my book outsold all of my siblings' books combined. And that just warms the cockles of a middle child's heart, I can tell you for sure.
Thank you so much, Alan Reeds.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Finn
everybody.
Murphy.